The Shein label is now gone.
Hello everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm all done with sweater upcycling for a while because it's time to get onto some warm weather dressing. So I went thrifting looking for some sundresses. I found this one and it needs some help. It's from that really terrible website Shein, which is sort of the worst of fast fashion. So I would never buy this dress except secondhand. It's kind of a sweet little dress. It's light, it's airy, comfortable, but there's some big problems. Like, I can't wear this dress as it is. It's cut really, really low down, way too low for me, and it has a cutout at the midriff. That's not gonna happen. And it's way too short for me. So there's 3 strikes against it, which would normally mean I wouldn't buy it. But I do like the little print. I think it has potential. And the first thing I noticed was that there's no bust dart. There's no shaping on the front. This definitely is the front. You can see the tag is sewn right back here. So that definitely is the front. But that front is not working for me. But because there's no bust dart, I think I'm going to be able to spin it around and have this tie at the back, which will be, I think, totally cute. I know that if I flip this around back to front, that neck is going to be too high. I've tried it on that way and it sits way up here and it's like, it's a bit choky. You probably know that I hate that. That's going to be a bit tricky. I'm not 100% confident that this is going to work. One other thing that I don't like about this dress is that elastic waist hits sort of awkwardly high. And so I want to kind of turn it into like a little bit of a midriff band. You're probably by now thinking, Catherine, that is way too much work. I'm still going to try. Now, I've had quite a few requests asking how to make something longer. And of course, anytime you want to make something longer, you have to add fabric. So then I looked around for some kind of fabric to add. And again, I wanted to get it from the thrift store. I didn't want to buy a new fabric for it. So I found this little dress. It wasn't really what I was looking for. I thought I would find something that was like maybe a red and white polka dot or a solid red or something like that. But instead I found this, and they are very similar fabrics. What am I going to do with this to make that work? Well, I'm hoping to be able to salvage the top of this and just wear it as a top, but then use this layered and pleated skirt to add on to this skirt. Okay, now I don't really want to just stick it at the bottom. I kind of want to break up this red, have the gray look more like an integral piece so it doesn't look like I just added on extra fabric. Anytime you're trying to make something longer, just adding fabric to the bottom, it doesn't always look intentional. So by breaking up the red, I might be able to make this look like it was supposed to be like that. Here's a fun thing that I'm going to try to make the fabrics go together better. I wanted to bring some red into this. So I went to Michael's craft store and I scoured their shelves for fabric markers. And what I found was this called Make Mark It. And it's a permanent fabric pen. I wanted something ultra fine, and so I bought that one. But then I also noticed that they have my favorite, the Sharpie, and they have a Sharpie in ultra fine as well. So I'm going to try them both out, do a little bit of playing around on a hidden part of that fabric, wash it again, and see which one works. I can't show it to you frontwards. That's not happening. But I can show it to you backwards. Now you can also see what I mean about that waist elastic just hitting too high. So I'm wondering if I can kind of turn the top part of the skirt into an elastic casing. You can also see how that neck is just too high. So I would like to drop that down a couple inches. I don't really know how I'm going to do that yet because it's bound in the same fabric. I don't think I'm going to end up with any scrap. So I don't really know yet. That never stops me from jumping right in though. So let's get busy.
I want to bring a hint of red into this one, just to tie them in together better. In this pocket, I'm going to test out a couple different options. Sharpies are permanent, it won't wash out, and this is an ultra fine point. This is Make Mark It fabric ink markers. This is also permanent. You know what? It's bleeding a little bit more. And there and here. That one bleeds a lot more. And it's a bit of a darker red. I kind of like the brighter red of the Sharpie. I think that could be really cute together. Oh, I actually quite like that. I'm going to wash it another time though and see what happens to the Make Mark It and the Sharpie. Here's the pocket after washing it. I'm not really happy with either, honestly. The Sharpie went really orange. The Make Market went really pink. I don't really like either one of them with it. So now what am I going to do? Very disappointing. I had a little sulk and now I'm back. I think I'm going to proceed. I'm going to take out the pocket. I have to remove this front placket. I think I'm just going to cut this. Instead of opening all this, I'm just going to cut a finger width above that seam and save me a lot of time of unpicking all those stitches. I have another dress I could move on to if I thought this really wasn't going to work, but my heart was set on this one for today. So I'm going to persevere. Hopefully this top is worth saving because that might be all I get out of this project. The top might be the only thing that's salvageable. I want to remove the whole pocket and it's stitched 3 times. See, so the pockets are out. So now I'll just close up that seam. I'm also just going to cut off the button placket and sew a seam there. So now this is just all one continuous loop. It's one big ruffle. The bottom of the ruffle is already a finished edge, and so I don't want a tail of serger thread there. So I'll just serge a couple stitches and then sink the needles down, lift up, pull that tail of thread around, and then serge over it. So that gives me a nicely finished end and I don't have to run that serger tail through. Okay, this is just crying out for an iron. Darn it, a little pucker in my fold. I'm just gonna have to go fix that. Be right back. Okay, that's better. So a little pucker like that only takes like 2 minutes to fix. And I know that sometimes it's hard to make yourself care when you just want to get something done. But it is worth it. Now I'm wondering where to insert the gray. This is a separate ruffle here. I don't know if you can see there's a seam right there. And so I might just cut above the ruffle the same way I did with the gray. So do I just have like one big section of gray and then the red ruffle on the bottom of this? Or do I actually break this piece up with these big horizontal pleats? I could actually cut under there and insert a piece of red in here. So it would be red, gray, red, gray, red. Maybe that's too much, right? Maybe just the red, gray, and then red again. It's probably easier to start that way. If it's too blocky, then I could probably come back in and rearrange. But once I cut this, I can't uncut it. So I'll just start the simplest way, which is just cutting this ruffle off just that little finger width above the seam. You know, I feel like I'm not going to know if this looks good or not until I have it sewn together. Like, I'm very skeptical at this point, but I'm going to persevere because that's just what I do. So I just got this all nicely ironed, and then I realized that I can't retain that line of gathering because it makes this too narrow to fit on the dress. So I have to cut off the gathering so that I can use this on a 1-to-1 with the dress. And of course that means I'm going to have to iron it again just to get all those little gathers out. I need the full length of this top edge. So I've quarter marked both pieces, the red and the gray. I'm having to just ease the red in a little bit. And then I'm just going to serge and see if I'm happy. These 2 rayons are just lightweight enough that my 4-thread serge will be fine. I don't really have to sew and then serge this, especially since this seam isn't going to be a stress point at all. So once I serge this, I'll have a little bit better idea as to whether or not I'm actually going to like it. I've got the red side down because it's the one that's a little bit bigger. I can kind of hold back on the gray, and then the feed dogs help move the red along, and so it eases in very easily. It eases in easily. And if I didn't have a serger, I would just sew this seam and then zigzag the edge. So that went well, I think. So I just tried it on, and a couple good things happened. One is that it's a little bit longer than I actually need. And so I can make a little fold at the bottom of the red that will mimic these folds in the gray. Then it makes the gray look like a more integral part of the dress. So I'm making this fold and I'm just going to sew right in that ditch. I think it's going to work. Kind of liked it when I had it on. So my confidence is growing. I think it might be nice. So this is the underside. That pleat's just going to come over. I'll press this flat and hopefully it mimics these pleats. Okay, so I've pressed this pleat flat and I think that's pretty sweet. So now the ruffle, I'll just serge the edge of the ruffle here because I'll be sewing this against a finished edge. So I won't be serging that seam later. To gather the ruffle up more, I'm going to change the differential feed to 2. And then when I serge, it's just going to gather that up a little bit more to make it easier for me to pin to the gray. So now it's a little bit more gathery. And I'm dividing the bottom of the gray into 8 equal sections because quarter marking was just not enough to be able to handle that big length of gathering. And then the ruffle has to be 8th marked as well. So the seams are the halfway points. I'll line the side seams up with the side seams of the gray. I want this stitch line to come just to the bottom of the serge line there. And I'll be sewing this from the outside, so that's a little bit tricky. But then I just need to find my next 8th mark on the gray and put it to my next 8th mark on the ruffle. And then a couple of pins in between. It's going to shift around on the machine for sure. So I think I'm going to need quite a few pins. But it's definitely fitting in better now that I did that extra gathering on the serger. Differential feed is one really nice feature on a serger that helps you just gather up a bit. You can also on most sergers do a fine narrow hem like this. Okay, I think that's pretty sweet. So now I'll just be sewing right along that same stitch line. I think it's cute. I think my thread is a pretty good match. That's important here because this stitching is going to show. And the gathering is actually going to be covered by this pleat, but I do want it to look kind of even. So if I just smooth it with my fingers first and then go. I'm also feeling to make sure I'm not missing the ruffle, that it's not hanging down. So that's looking kind of nice. It looks like it's sort of meant to be like that. Removing the stitches from the front of the neckband. Unpicking this little neckband is not a big problem. The part that doesn't seem like it's going to be that much fun is putting it back on. We'll have to see how that goes. All right. This piece of bias isn't going to stretch all the way down there. It's not going to stretch at all. But if I gather in that center front a little bit, then that makes less distance that the band has to travel. And then I think that could work. And I think a little bit of gathering at the center front of that neck would be pretty. And I did try it on and sort of pinch in that front, and there is room there. I can bring it in like that. So that should be okay. So I'm folding it in half, bringing the shoulder seams together so that I know I'm symmetrical. I might chicken out from cutting it as low as I did. Well, I'll at least add seam allowance above that. Good. Alrighty. So yeah, there's no way that's going to stretch there, but I'm just going to put a gathering stitch and pull that up. That'll be nice. Okay, let's go to the machine. With it folded in half neatly, I better just make a little snip to show myself where I want to start and stop my gathering stitch so that it is symmetrical as well. So I'm just going to run my gathering stitch from that notch to this notch. And then I can just use that thread to just gather up a little bit at the center front. Now I'll try to get the bias back on. So I'm going to mark the center of the bias strip. These friction markers are the best. Oh yeah, now that bias will fit on no problem. I think I'm going to sew the inside edge first. So I still want my center to the seam. I'm just going to sew right there first. And then I'll try it on and make sure I am happy before I finish it off. I think it's almost impossible for you to see what I'm doing with that red print. So I just want to show you on these two totally different fabrics what I'm doing. This is store-bought bias. It's basically the same thing. I'm unrolling it and I'm sewing it to the wrong side of the fabric first. Bias is nice because it bends around curves. So there's the first stitch, and you can see that I'm not right in the fold. I'm just a little bit beyond it, and that allows it to still turn in the fold. Sometimes you inhibit that fold if you sew right in it. So now it just nicely wraps around that raw edge, and from the outside now I can sew again. And my gray thread on the red shows every little wobble, but you get the idea. That's a nice way to finish off an edge. I'll take up my pins at the very last second so that everything gets held in place as long as possible. Okay, one more check of the gathering. I think it's okay. I will just try it on though. Yep, that's got it. It's just lovely. Okay. So now all it's left to do is just wrap that bias over. I can even just tuck in yucky threads. Then I'll just be sewing close to this folded edge. And then this gathering stitch in gray thread here, it's already done its job. So I'll be pulling that out. Oh, there. There, that gathering thread is gone now. Easy peasy. And I did switch to red thread now. Tiny back tacks and things like this that are going to show. And I'm really trying to get right down here at the bottom edge of that bias binding. There. Now, I'll erase my friction pen marking. But then that's pretty great, don't you think? That looks kind of just like it was always like that. Just a little bit of gentle gathering at the front. That's pretty. Nice. Okay, let's do the waist. All right, for that elastic, I just want to quarter mark it. So I'm bringing the two ends together. That'll be the center front. A little bit of an overlap would make the center back, right? So there. And then that'll be side seam. And the other side seam. Good. So I've got the elastic pinned to the inside with the quarter points all matching the quarter points of the dress, and just a little bit of an overlap at the center back there. And I'm not even making a fabric casing or anything. I'm just going to sew it in a stretched out position, and I'll sew the top edge and the bottom edge. I also want to sew down the original elastic because it keeps twisting. All right, so as soon as my back tack is done, I just find the next quarter point and hold that, stretch the whole thing out, and I'm trying to keep my elastic right below the serged edge of the original one, and I have to have a hand behind so that I can maintain that stretched out position. I'm just easing this fabric along so that the gathers run straight up and down. I don't want them on an angle. I also want to make sure all of the top stays out of the way. So next quarter point, pick that up. Make sure everything's staying out of the way, especially those ties. Those would be easy to get in the way. Okay, that was not too bad. So now I'll do another row right along the bottom. Good. So I can't stretch until I get that back tack done. Then I pick up and stretch. And the second time around is easier because it's already held in place. Oh yeah, look at that. That just gives like a wider elasticized waist. That's going to feel better, and I think that's going to look better too. This original elastic that was twisting and bothering me, I think I'll sew over that, but I'm going to use a long stitch length. I'm worried that if I use a shorter stitch length, it's going to stretch it out more, and see how it already looks kind of stretched out. So I'm just going to do a long stitch length. I'm basically sewing right through the middle of that elastic, just so that it can never twist. I didn't want to stretch it out in that open part in the back because it looked like it was already kind of getting saggy there, but now I will. I do believe I am done. So this is what's left for the top. I just want to see if I can salvage this. The sides are a bit open where I removed the pockets, so I'm going to close that up. I had thought I would just run an elastic casing around the bottom, which would be super cute if you like wearing cropped tops. It's too short for me to do that. So in my stash, I found this gray ribbing, and I think I'm just going to quickly do a band on the bottom of this. So I think I'll do a 6-inch band. That'll fold in half, end up giving me 3 inches, minus the seam allowance. So about 2.5 inches for the final band. And then I want the band to just be able to comfortably stretch to the top. So about like that. I'm just going to sew this closed right side together and press that seam open and flat. Good, so I've sewn the sides of the top closed again. And it's inside out, and I have quarter marked it. And then the band is prepared as well. And then the whole thing pressed. And then this is quarter marked too. So just 4 even sections. And then I'll pin all 3 raw edges together. Seam to seam. Center front to center front. Oh, and I also sewed across the bottom of the placket here just to keep that together. Pin all 4 matching points. Yeah, that'll stretch in nicely. To make that a bit easier for myself, I'm just going to stretch, grab 3 edges, and pin. So I'm going to pin all around like that, and then I think I'm just going to serge it. Of course, if you don't have a serger, same thing applies. You can just sew with your regular straight stitch and then zigzag that edge. But I think I'm just going to serge it off camera and then show you the final product. Okay, the top is done, and that was super easy, and I absolutely love this top. I feel fantastic in it. It really feels like me. It's just soft and drapey and easy to throw on with a pair of jeans, and I think I'm going to wear this when I head out later today. I just love the top. So now let me show you the dress. Okay, so the dress is done, and it does feel like something that I might just continue to tweak a little bit. I like it, I'm happy, I think I'd have fun wearing it, but I think it still could use a little bit of tweaking. I was disappointed that I couldn't get the red Sharpie to work on the gray fabric. I think that would have tied them in nicely together. But even though both of the pens I used said permanent, neither of them was truly permanent to stay true to their color. But the main thing I'm really happy about with this video is what I learned. I learned that it's not very difficult to turn a dress backwards, and sometimes it works way better like that. I think the back of this dress works really, really nicely. I love the bow in the back, and the little peekaboo below the bow is really pretty, but it did not work for me on the front at all, like to the point where I couldn't even show you the before. I also learned that I can drop a neckline that is finished with a bias binding if there's a little bit of room there to kind of bring that in. And the neckline now, it's just way more comfortable. Remember, it was up to here, and it was just that bothersome neckline that I just can't stand. So dropping it that little bit makes all the difference, and I think it looks really pretty. The other thing that worked really well, that like surprised me at how easy and effective it was adding that little strip of elastic underneath the original one, like just an extra little band. I hadn't really ever done an elastic like that where I didn't make a casing. I just stitched the elastic right to the garment, top and bottom. It worked great. So to me, the success of this video is more in the techniques and in that top. I love that top. That's a winner. I'd love to know what you think on this one, because I always say that I just work with it until I love it. And I do like it, but I want to know your opinion as well. Is this finished product successful? Do you have any ideas of how I could tweak it to make this something that I would definitely love? I think I'll still have fun wearing this dress, but I'd love to know your opinion. So let me know in the comments, but be nice, please. Be nice. And I hope that you learned something in the techniques. And until next time on Catherine Sews, you take care.